I think out of home is more important than ever. The thing is, we are exhausted by what we see in a world of digital. So we are looking up and we are looking out and we're looking for more experiences. And that's why I think good out of home in good places is more important than ever, because we are consuming things in a different way and we are looking for light in the darkness of craziness of the digital.
Hello everyone, I'm Greg Wise and this is Built for Brand. In this episode, we are talking to Nathan Rosenberg, Chief Marketing and Brand Experience Officer at Virgin Voyages. Nathan has a tremendous amount of experience, 26 years inside the Virgin family, running brands across Virgin Mobile, Virgin Radio, Virgin Galactic, before finally landing at Virgin Voyages, where he has spent the last decade really building a cruise line people actually bring up at dinner. And we're going to bring that up during this podcast. We're going to get into why he thinks the real marketing happens after the trip ends, how a no kids rule became the brand's clearest differentiator, and really what happens internally when a CMO kills a billboard campaign that the team already loved. Can't wait for that one. So Nathan, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm going to say ahoy because obviously I work for a cruise line, so that's where I've got to start. Ahoy to everybody. Look, but first of all, you've made me sound like I've been around for decades, which is true. And actually, I started on Virgin Voyages almost 15 years ago now as a PowerPoint deck. And here we are with 4 ships sailing around the world. It is amazing how much you realize time can fly without you even being aware of it. Crikey.
It's unbelievable. And I can't wait to get into it. But first, our viewers and our listeners do know we do have a fun moment during the podcast called Beyond the Billboard, where essentially we start every episode. Our producers have found some sort of ad, ideally out of home in the wild, and you and I click on a link and discuss whether it worked for the brand, and you just can react to it in real time. So
I just hope I know the brand, because I'm Australian. I've lived in Florida a while, but I don't know everything here.
Nathan, there have been times where I didn't know, and that's part of the reaction. Okay. So that's the authentic part of it.
I just hope it's not the one that I drive on the freeway with and it says, your wife is hot and it's about an air conditioning service.
Isn't that a good one? So wait, hold on real quick before we click. That is, it's an HVAC company down in Florida, right?
Yeah.
All right, so that's famous. We talk about that example all the time. I know South Florida really well, up and down 95. That is a famous billboard.
No, it's definitely famous. It's one of those things that contextually you think, today, is it okay or not? I don't know anymore.
You know, we're talking about it, so it gets the people going.
Yeah, well, I haven't used them for my HVAC, though, so maybe it doesn't really work. Anyway, let's get into a little clicking thing. Let's
all right, ready?
Yes.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, interesting. Oh, how cute is that?
Okay.
Okay, first of all, hang on. How did they do the color matching that well? That's really interesting. Do you think that this has been retouched or this is actually the real photo? It's so close to the actual reality of the sky.
You know something? I don't know, but that makes me kind of like it.
Also, the other thing I love about, here's what I'm going to tell you immediately. The organic nature of the actual materiality in the left-hand corner where it feels like you're actually putting canvas down on painting, the person obviously doing it, and then the color. That's quite good. If I was looking for paint, I don't like their logo, but other than that, I quite like what they've done.
I actually really love it. Let's just assume it's real. It is a vinyl, in this case, static billboard with the guy painting, or it looks like he's actively painting it right now, whether it's happening in real time or not. I love it. Reason for me I love it is because it's contextual. I mean, it's different. It's simple. It's got that experiential type of feel to it, but it's got the contextual element, meaning it's playing into the background.
Is he painting it right now? Like, is that actually what happened? Like, whoever took the photo, did you ask them?
We don't know.
Let's find out, though. But anyway, yeah, I agree with you.
We are going to find out. But the reason why I think it's real also is because look on the top there, the billboard, the structure, the shadows above those 2 poles are also the paint. So this was done on purpose.
Clever. Berger, we'll give you your credit. It's not bad at all. Well done.
All right, Berger. Good job.
Do you have to score it out of 10 or you don't worry about that? You just kind of just let it go? Shouldn't you give them a score so they know how they do versus other people you rate?
We should. We could start it.
You could actually have like an award, like whoever did the best of the year, basically, and it like becomes a thing, and then maybe they get like a golden award from you or something.
Well, then let's start it now on a scale of 1 to 10.
Now, here's the problem. If we go too high, it kind of ruins it for everybody else. If we go too low, it's not fair, basically. So if I'd looked at like 20 billboards, I probably would have given this a 9, but I have to go 8.5 because I don't know what else you've got.
Okay, well, it's a good score. A little bit of a rookie score, but that's okay. I'm going to go 6.78.
Okay, well, you're harsh. Jeez. What's the 0.78 though? What's that about? What's going on in your brain that does that? What kind of person are you that does the 7.8?
Or how about the 6.7?
Okay. Well, then you're doing the 6.7 joke the kids don't like anymore, so you got to stop that.
Yeah, no, that is awful. That was last year's thing. We'll go 6.8. I will round up to 6.8.
Okay. All right, fine. We'll accept it. Thank you.
No, the reason I did it is because I agree with you. You give someone a really high score, then where do you go from there? And too low wouldn't be fair. So.
What'll happen though is you'll get some really good billboards during the year, and you'll have to give them like 5s because they're actually good, but they're not quite as good as this one. So you're kind of like they're going to feel really bad about themselves.
The good news is we can
Greg
always
hated it. Greg hated my billboard.
Well, Berger, no, we actually really like this. 6.8
Yeah.
is actually a great score for me.
Well done, Berger.
Well, Nathan, let's dive into it because what you do is very interesting. Obviously, your experience speaks for itself. But let's start with, just the concept of a cruise in general. I mean, look, like most folks that are listening to this, a lot of folks have gone on to cruises, but it's a pretty big purchase. And it's a big purchase that people make really oftentimes if it's for the first time without ever trying the product first. I've actually never been on a cruise, so I would be buying it sight unseen. What do you think actually gets someone to make that leap?
To slightly challenge your hypothesis, the reality is the majority of people that cruise every year have cruised before. And so that's one of the things that we wanted to change. We, as a brand, were like, Virgin is a global brand that's very experience focused. We are one that's very sort of resolutely committed to making sure we take care of our crews, they take care of our sailors. The commitment for us was like, how do we bring new people into the category? And the thing that works in our favor is this idea of the Virgin brand being pretty well known as an experience and service brand. Now, what generally happens is people are driven by 3 things. First of all, they're looking for destinations if they're an existing cruiser, and they know price. They kind of understand which the brands are and what they like. For the newbies, though, you have to basically convince them that some of the, I guess what you'd call the lovely stereotypes are not the things they're going to experience. And I will say, fortunately for us, the brand Virgin gives us the ability to break through those stereotypes because we are one that generally people think is quite forward in design, because we're known at being quite good at service, and because obviously we are at a global level. A lot of the preconceived ideas that new cruisers would have are kind of like, well, I wouldn't believe the existing brands are the ones I'd go for, but Virgin's one I'm prepared to try because ultimately it's a bit distinct. The second thing is we made a very deliberate decision, as we'll probably talk about later on anyway, is that we have no kids on board. So we had to find a space for ourselves that gave parents a reason to want to get away. And that for us was like the brand with a proposition that was distinct. And then thirdly, making sure that we did very Virgin things, which is like extraordinary value, like all that kind of stuff is important. So it's a big purchase price. And the problem today for a lot of people is for new people, you go to a hotel, you kind of know that you can leave the site and go and buy dinner somewhere else and things like that. But cruising, you're generally on board. And so when you're on board sailing, you have to buy things sometimes, not everything's included. And that can be the thing that scares people. They go, holy shit, I had no idea that my bill when I get off the ship was going to be exactly the same as what I paid for the ticket. And so a very Virgin thing was like, well, obviously abolishing that, pretty much so much is included. So I think the thing for new cruisers is just like the holiday is good value. In today, if you think about inflation, you think about flight costs, if you think about the pressure people are under when it comes to discretionary income right now, it is, I would argue, probably the most value-based product you can get because of the inclusions and the places you go. It's also low commitment, really, because effectively you're not going somewhere with massively complicated passport restrictions on everything. And that's why I think the category has expanded and exploded so much. And new capacity is very difficult to get into the industry, so bringing new people in can be quite confining. So, look, again, all I'd say is that in the end, when people aren't cruisers, you'll have 20% of people who will never cruise because they get seasick or they're afraid of the ocean. There's like literally sort of 40 to 60% in the middle who are like the cruise curious who might try it. And the rest are like people who've cruised before. So I'm going to get you over the line one day and it'll be with us.
I'm excited. Honestly, when I do think of, and this kind of leads to my next question is, how do you think about the brand and where does it start? And obviously the no kids rule is a big differentiator. But if you were to sort of boil it down, is like, how do you get that sort of prestigious feel? Where does that come from? How do you maintain that? Where when you think of this brand, you think of the experience, the service, as you mentioned, no kids, premium, world class. Personally, you didn't even say some of those things, and that's how I think about it.
Well, I mean, we all have sort of baggage we carry about brands anyway, right? So there's a history. It might be where you grew up, it might be your own experiences with it, whatever. But the thing that's most challenging about working at Virgin, and I've been with the brand, as you said, 26 years. I've been on Virgin Voyages actually 14 years. And the challenging part as a CMO and also who works on brand experience is this. You kind of stand on the shoulder of giants. There's Virgin Galactic, the space line. There's Virgin Atlantic, the airline. There's Virgin Hotels. There's Virgin Active, which is our gyms. Like, we have somewhere in the order of 40 companies around the world, like 80,000 employees who work in the brand, a history of doing, interesting things at a consumer champion level, like really sort of radicalizing industries and bringing new choice. That's a lot when you start. Now, the most compoundingly problematic thing for us is when you do it on a cruise line, you are effectively doing 12 Virgin businesses in one. You're a hotel business, you're a spa business, you're a food and beverage business, you're a nightclub business, you're a retail business, that's the challenging part. So you kind of are benchmarking against almost the very best of what we do elsewhere. And then the second thing is you have all the expectations people have of you as being a design-forward brand, an experience-led brand. But what's really interesting is that it's not as complex as you think, because you have to do three things. One, you have to basically really work out what it is the people in the category that you're going into need and want. How do you appeal to them? How do you stand out? And how do you make sure you have a reason to exist? Not every Virgin company has succeeded, and we haven't succeeded when we haven't had the thing that customers want or what they're looking for in the category. When we've done that badly, we haven't succeeded. When we do it right, we tend to do pretty well. The second thing is you then have to understand that the challenge we have as a purpose-led brand is, for us, we have one line that Richard uses, which is be the reason someone smiles today. In a world full of craziness, where there's no joy, no happiness, our job at Virgin is to make sure that you leave the crazy behind and you get the chance to kind of restore, recover, recuperate, fall in love, whatever. And then you go home with the resilience and the strength to got to deal with the world at large. And that's the thing. Every measure is built around the idea of the smile index, as we call it. And the thing there that's important is that the money follows if you get the joy right, because people rebook. People will tell you they love you. They'll spend more with you. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, and this is actually Richard's first one and the most important, if you take care of your employees, and we call them crew on board the ship because they are effectively voyaging at sea. If you take care of your crew, they will do everything they can to take care of the people that come on board, the sailors, as we call them, not passengers. And if your sailors or passengers love what you do, they'll come back and the money will follow and your shareholders get their returns. So we invert that pyramid to be crew and then sailors and then effectively the shareholders rather than the other way around, which tends to be a very American principle, like shareholders on top, basically. So you get those three things right. You know why you exist for customers. You actually then make sure that you have a reason for existing and you do the thing they want. And then thirdly, you take care of your people. It's a winning formula.
That's unbelievable. The smile index is, that's a real thing you guys use internally?
Yeah, because again, there's so many metrics that marketing people use to try and measure things, and CFOs want more to prove that. And the thing for us is like, the question we ask is, how do we make you feel? Secondly, when are you coming back? You ask those two questions, that in itself is better than whether or not someone spent $5.50 in the onboard spa, whether or not they basically were happy with the price they paid. Because if someone's willing to tell you they're coming back and when, they tell you they were happy and they smiled, they're like at least once a day, you've got the joy thing. And I think you said this in the beginning, and we'll probably talk about it later, but the reason I do this is because as a marketer, my job is not to worry about the brand in any other way than the memory it creates. And we can talk about that a little bit later if you want, but I will tell you that the ads are great. Our ads are funny, they can be humorous, they're awesome. Out of Home is lovely, we have some very funny lines, but the thing is, that ultimately is not the brand. The brand is that moment. You step on board the ship, you meet our first crew member. It's the third night. If the pasta comes to your table, maybe it's not hot enough, you ask for them to fix that problem for you. It's the fourth day when you're sitting on the balcony and you're in the hammock and you're swaying in the ocean thinking about the person you love. It's the fifth day when you shake your phone, you get champagne delivered. That is the brand. That's the memories people take with them. And it's more important and more valuable than anything else you do.
It's so fascinating. You just touched on it. And I know in the opening, I mentioned a lot of the marketing comes sort of after someone takes the trip. And you've talked about like that real marketing moment happening later when a guest is retelling that story, retelling the trip to friends and other folks and that experience. So then walk through, even somewhat tactically, like knowing that, how does that actually change how you run marketing day to day with that in mind?
No, that's fair, because I think a lot of marketing companies and marketing teams don't really think about the product experience as part of their remit. I would say to them, you are 150,000% wrong. If you are not in their challenging product teams or revenue teams or whatever, however your structure exists, if you are not there saying to those folks in the operations team, what kind of experience are you delivering? It is irrelevant if your ad says we're the best at delivering XYZ if you don't deliver it. because the story that gets told is different. Well, they said they would deliver it, they didn't do it. So, the lovely thing in our world as well is we're so looking for negative stuff all the time these days. We click on the headlines that are bad. We want to tell the bad stories. We love the social shit, which is actually the stuff that people, where they're complaining about things. And that's the problem. You have enough negativity. So the thing you have to always focus on is, if you are delivering compounding joy and happiness, 3 weeks from now, you get off the ship. I am more interested, and I wish I was sitting in your dining room when you were sitting down with a group of 6 friends and someone turns to you and says, hey, how was the cruise you went on? Was it Virgin you went on? And your first response is like, I got to tell you, it blew my mind. And I think I want to do it again. We should do it together. And that conversation becomes the active salesperson for us, telling that story. And it won't be necessarily the stories that are about, oh, I loved sitting on the balcony hammock and swaying in the wind. It'll be like, you won't believe what happened. 2 things. Well, first of all, we had dinner one night, like, oh, they screwed it up or something like that. But the guy, like, threw champagne at us. He took care of us. He fixed it. There was no issues. Oh, my God. And then we got dancing till midnight. Or like, oh, no, there's a thing called Scarlet Night on our ship, which is a full ship takeover. And there are moments which are transformational people. You'll be like, oh, you won't believe what happened on Scarlet Night. And so that's the thing that actually then gets your friends going, oh my God, we've got to look at this together. Our rebook rate is the highest in the industry. Our friends bringing a friend is the highest in the industry, because when you go on an adult-only voyage, here's the thing that happens for you. When there are no kids, you get to fall in love again with your partner. You get to basically reconnect with groups of friends that you don't. If you're a parent, you're a logistics coordinator, you're a psychotherapist, you're effectively you're a doctor, you're everything. And only when you get away from the family can you basically restore that sort of sense of who you are as an adult. So 15, 20 years from now, when the kids have gone off to do whatever they do, you look across the table and realize, I still love you, still want to be with you. So that's why I think we really compound on the narrative, the stories you tell. And every time we look at a new idea, every time we think about it, our brand team is centered to the conversation with all of our experienced folks talking about, well, how do we talk about this? How is this group going to talk about it? What will they do? What are they photographing? What's the comments they're going to make? And when you put it down to that level of narrative, that you understand how people will talk about this, it means every single experience that we build in our experience playbooks is thoughtfully curated to go, this is an Instagram moment. This effectively is a moment where if, someone's going to basically take video and share it later on. So that's why we are so resolutely focused on every single detail, sound, everything.
I do think that a lot of marketers and brands do miss the, hey, there's marketing that happens before, during, and after. Like that after, and what you just mentioned, having the ability to see through, like, hey, the marketing pre or during, how will that show up in the after is brilliant. I mean, it makes a ton of sense, because when you break down tactically what people literally do when they leave a cruise and they talk to their friends and they're sitting around the dinner table, they're out to dinner with friends or whatever, they're at a family gathering and they're talking, they're pulling out their phone and they're showing pictures, or they're showing a post, or they are posting. That is exactly what they're doing. And then you think to yourself, okay, so those steps along the way of the journey of the consumer and what they experience can align with all of that. That's the story. That is the life of this thing.
But it's true. This is not the Mad Men era, right? Like literally, it's not an ad that runs in a newspaper that has, a particular brand saying how great they are and everyone go, oh, they're great, we should buy them. It is that, you may run into a branded ad that comes from our company, whether it's out of home, whether it's, digital or whatever. You don't necessarily buy that minute if you're new. You're going to say, okay, what is this? Or maybe I won't do anything about it today, but I'm going to check it out. You're going to go to Instagram, TikTok. The great thing about, I would say, about out of home, just to give you a bit of credit, the reminder of that to kind of keep people as part of the consideration set is critical, because we are being assaulted by so many things in so many places. So that's why for us it's a big deal. But the thing is, you won't actually trust the brand from the ad they see. They're going to go and look from reviews on Reddit. They're going to talk to people who've been on it. They're going to basically find stuff on social and share in the groups. And so if you do not control the opportunity of the narrative into the memories, you will not ever be able to tell your story properly, because everybody else is telling them. And today, here's the thing that's really frightening for people. Your ads are basically 3 times less effective than something from a creator or from somebody who's basically posting on social, because people don't believe you as a brand. They look for somebody else. Even if that person has no expertise in the area, they'll trust that more because it feels like it's not actually sponsored, even if it is.
So let me ask you this then. Slight transition, but you mentioned out of home. And so let me ask you about that, because you guys do out of home. I do want to hear about.
Well, the Virgin brand is famous for out of home. Like we love a good line. We love a good pun. Trust me.
And I do want to hear about the billboard campaign that essentially was killed and like everyone loved it. I want to get to that in a second. But how do you guys think about out of home? Where does that fit in the marketing stack?
It's always part of the stack because of 2 reasons. One is because the visibility I'll say depending on what type of at home, because I get a little bit antsy about some of the places where they literally try and shove 75 messages into one digital screen and run it at like a low level sort of thing when you're driving. But we're very conscious about where the site is, what's the context of the site. We do a lot of work on who's in the area and who's likely to be driving past there or walking past there. And then we think about what's the relative message we should put in there and how do we make people laugh. So if you see out of home from us, it doesn't tend to be pictures of ships saying, new ship just arrived, or like pictures of people happy smiling on a dock or having a drink, because like anybody can do that. The moment we want to try and do, and I'll give you our most famous one we ever did, was basically when there was a lot of discussion during an election campaign about inflation and eggs. The price of eggs was going crazy. Because we have a proposition which is pretty much all inclusive, we ran a message which said eggs included in every sailing, basically, to try and like have a bit of fun at what was going on in the zeitgeist, but also the fact it then reinforce the fact that we have, we've done things like make ship happen, the idea of like literally getting away and experiencing it, because the humor is the important part, because you are more likely, 2 times more likely to remember a billboard if there's humor in it that makes you sort of think about like, your wife is hot. Whether or not you agree, whether or not semantically you feel comfortable with it, the reality is the humor is what keeps people engaged. And we have this tendency as a brand, we like to minimize, like we have like 5 words max if you're lucky, quite bold, because a lot of brands try and shove 37 messages on there because the product team's involved, the CEO's seen it, and the CEO's wife has seen it, or CEO's husband, basically, depending on what gender or how they like to live their lives. It's like, that's the complicated thing here. You cannot misrepresent how important out of home is to your mix. The only reason people say it doesn't work is because they got bloody stupid creative and it's bad. It's not really the out of home's fault. It's yours.
Man, let's put that on a billboard. That statement right there. We tell people all the time, and not to equate this to, the fitness space, but people say, how do you lose weight? How do you get in shape? And it's like 70% of it is diet, right? And so the way I talk about out of home is, look, we can tell you based on the audience, based on the inventory, based on a multitude of factors. However, 65-70% of the success here is actually predicated on the design, the creative. And you nailed it. 5 words or less, and that's it.
This is the other thing that's really interesting. I think with the development of AI, there's a lot of conversations about, well, do you need creative people? Do you really? Because you can do it through Claude or something. And the thing I'll tell you from all of our research is the creative is even more important than ever. And the human sentiment in the creative, I'm an AI freak, I love it. But the idea of effectively not understanding what is the insight in people's mind and then turning it into a thing. I get so frustrated with some of the billboards going, no one can read that. I'm going at 70 miles an hour. Like literally you should just say, sometimes you go, just put your logo, it'd be better than what you've done up there, you silly person.
100%. You just wasted whatever the investment was.
So the reason it's also important is there are contexts and times of year when it's actually very, very helpful for the full messaging mix, because the other thing is, we have an understanding of attribution in a way, which is what's the message here or the placement here that is supportive of what we're doing. So we're different times of year, sometimes it's a bit more salesy, sometimes it's a bit more proposition-y, and sometimes it's a bit more brandy. And that's all determining on what the mindset of consumers is. So the other thing is you've got to use some level of science about not just where you go, what you say, but when you say it. I mean, that's the thing that marketers miss out on as well. Not everybody is buying just because you have a billboard up. The reality is, are people in the mindset? If they're not, get them ready. Harvest, put the seeds in the field and you can harvest it later.
I think that's really well said. How do you think about sort of measuring the efficacy of out-of-home efforts? And obviously that falls under the brand umbrella, if you will. So, how do you think about that? Like, what does success look like when you do your billboard campaigns?
There's 2 ways. One, obviously, our partners quite often have some level of measurement opportunity. There's impressions and stuff like that, but I'm a little more cynical about that. The thing is, we find very specifically the target group we're after, and we find those that live in certain areas, and then we can do our own sort of drop surveys into certain things to work out. And the relative flex for us is, what did you see and what do you remember? Because our lines generally tend to be quite funny. The thing is, we have a really high recall rate on our out-of-home when we do it, and we do it well. We haven't always done it well. Sometimes we screw it up. But the thing is, when it works, it's like a two times impact on like the attribution, because people go, oh, I've seen a TV ad. That's generally what they say first. The reality is we don't do TV, so we know that's kind of a wash. But when they can quote the line back to us, we kind of know that's when the work is done. And it's only generally amongst the audiences we want to have that we go into. And we do that ourselves. So we do a lot of our own sort of deterministic research into those segments in those areas because we understand how to get to them. It's a little bit more local, but it's actually very useful because what that does is every single moment in today from a market, like because there's so many messages coming at us in so many ways, unfortunately, you have to now live in a world of constant reinforcement that your brand even exists. And let me tell you, the sort of AEO work and the AI work, when it comes to the machines effectively giving you answers, it's harder than ever. And so we look for a constant drumbeat across a range of different media to make sure that we're constantly present, as opposed to these massive big campaigns for one message. It's almost like who, where, why, and that determines what message in that moment, at that time, in that place. So out of home is something we pop into 3 or 4 times a year in certain areas. We tend to try and hold it together most of the year in Florida because it's such a big market. It just depends on it. But I will just say that we are better at attribution than we used to be. We also know effectively you can, from certain audiences, understand some of the scientific work we're doing in data, the relative impact of each of the channels. So how important is social? How important is this to telling the whole story? And how additive is that to your overall conversion in the end?
That's interesting. And how do you guys think about out of home as part of the overall marketing mix? So a lot of folks we talk to, a lot of brands, actually depends. So a lot of modern, high growth, newer companies, out of home tends to be a larger percentage of their media mix, of just the overall marketing mix.
Because of the visibility.
Well, that and you mentioned trust, and that's a big part of what they do too. How do you think about how to allocate dollars?
I said this, by the way. I actually think, weirdly, and I don't want to give you any credit for anything, I think out of home is more important than ever. Because if you think about the world you live in the digital sphere, where effectively it's all just effectively generic stuff that could be produced by the meta ad machine, can produce the same ads over and over again. The thing is, we are exhausted by what we see in a world of digital. So we are looking up and we are looking out and we're looking for more experiences. And that's why I think good out of home in good places is more important than ever, because we are consuming things in a different way and we are looking for light in the darkness of craziness of the digital. My team is also massively interested because we sit there going, we know what works in digital, but it's a machine. It's a factory. The reality is the stuff that inspires and connects and engages is the stuff that's more highly visible and more out of home, because again, it just feels like it's part of people's natural environment.
It's also what you do. It is literally your experience.
That's true. We do like to do things outside. We like to do things with people. We like to talk to people.
And that's part of it. And that's part of the beauty behind what you guys do also. So let me ask you this, because there was apparently a billboard campaign that didn't make it.
Yes.
Tell me about that, because it sounded like you and the team loved it, but someone didn't.
No, me that hated it. Like literally my team presented this. We were doing something in on the West Coast. It was our arrival there. This is part of me, like obviously have been around a while. I have a very strong view about how Virgin should present itself, what our experience of product is. And the team was using language which I think is funny in the social sphere, like because it's memeified basically. And I get it. I get effectively if I was in Instagram and that was the ad you're running, totally funny maybe. The problem for me in the out-of-home environment is that's not necessarily how people receive the message. It was almost a little too inside joke. And so my pushback to the team was like, funny maybe for 5 people, but what about everybody else? And so there was a lot of pushback because, you know, the Gen Zers and they're like, what do you mean? It's the coolest thing we've ever done. And I'm like, no, it's in your world, to the billboard. So it was a very big out-of-home placement, like huge. And they'd printed it and I didn't get to see it. And I was like, that's coming down. We are literally going to redo and reprint that. Because again, I don't think if you're spending the money, I'm a bit like, to use your cruise math or your CMO math, 4 weeks of an ad that actually has no impact versus like produce the creative again, basically get it better. And 2 weeks is only what you get out of it, but it's actually more effective. I'll take that every day because I understand enough like you do. The creative is important to driving the outcome. It is not just about the medium. It is actually about the message, even though the memory matters.
And look, it's hard in the moment, but I agree. I'm glad you did that because we always say to our clients too is before you do or commit to anything, make sure that we have the story right. Because again, I'm on record of saying, a large percentage of the success relies on the creative.
Do context as well. Like I think this is the thing I'm astounded constantly by the lack of insight or understanding about where the placements are and what the relative interesting thing could be for that area. Because we all have our normal paths we go on to get to the grocery store, or even though I use Instacart, or, you go to work basically. It's almost like it's interesting that we don't think about that next level of what people are actually doing in that space. And that's where I think the magic actually is. You can do a pretty standard brand ad and feel good about yourself. Like, yeah, the brand placements are out there. Okay, fine. You've got awareness. The reality is, what is the action they're going to take? What is the consideration that comes out of that? And that's the next level that you've got to really, that's what out of home allows you to do. You can literally have different messages on every single thing you do.
Could end it on that, Nathan, because that is exactly how we think about it too. Audience plus context plus moments.
And look, again, I think I talked about the sort of digital placements. I think some are great. Some of the static placements are great. But the thing I love about digital placements, if it's the right number, the messages you can deliver can be contextually interesting to tell a story. And the thing is, people get exposed to them over a number of days or weeks, basically. And that's the thing I've seen. We've done a really lovely job sometimes of reinforcing 3 or 4 things over and over again. Our number one billboard as a joke level was the eggs one. The most popular billboard we've ever done is No Kids, No Kidding. that idea of being an adult-only cruise line, it's the one that people still talk about that we did last year, where it's literally they're going, oh my God. So what is that?
So on that note, kind of shifting gears a little bit, because I do know that campaign. If I were to say to you, okay, Nathan, no budget cap, anything you want, and you could pick any creative, you could put a Virgin Voyages billboard anywhere. Where would you put it and why? And quite frankly, anything goes in this answer.
There's such an easy answer. Oh, it'd be great to be in. People go, oh, Times Square. No, Times Square is a mess for me. It's like soupy stuff, basically. Literally, it's driving into Miami. Basically, when people have arrived from the craziness of like the world, like you get out of MIA, there are a number of sites along there which is just like you can almost now breathe because you've left the airport and everything you've left behind is your baggage. Like I want that moment of like you've arrived, your baggage arrived, but now you need to leave. So your luggage has arrived, but leave your baggage behind because you're about to start something new when you get down here. So I would take like 10 placements along the freeway saying, breathe out, just breathe out. You're going to breathe out now. Like that idea of just encouraging people to kind of sort of like, oh, I can chill now. I don't need to bring my New York sensibility or my crazy LA side to me. So, and it's just, my own meta home is not inexpensive, as you probably well know, but it's that for me because not only is it an impactful place, but you're actually in the mindset of understanding who the people are that are arriving, what they're here to do, which is generally a lot of them are on holidays, but you're effectively, as a holiday brand, we're just saying, it's okay, just breathe out. You're good.
That is good. No, that is genuinely really good. Again, that's the context. That's the timing. Those are the moments. And that is, look, out of home is the canvas to be able to do that. Love that. Okay. And let me ask you this then. Outside of your own brand, is there a brand, a travel brand, or any brand that you sort of are, call it crushing on right now? Someone you admire, you love, and tell us why.
Today, where I'm absolutely falling in love is it's a brand I'm never going to be able to afford. It's Amam. And even though they're doing a cruise of sorts, a small private yacht, there is a beauty in the simplicity of what they do and the level of service that goes along with that just feels in the world of crazy, completely and utterly calm. And so the reason I'm crushing on them is because, again, they are a beautiful product. They're an expensive product. They are inaccessible for most people. Like Amangiri, out in Utah is gorgeous. I'm never probably going to be able to stay there. The yacht is like massively crazy expensive, but there is something about the serenity in the way they present themselves that just helps me feel like even as the constant chaos exists here, there are places you can get respite from it. And again, it's that beauty which I feel like we lose the aesthetic a lot. We are so caught up in noise and buzz and crazy and how do we get people's attention? And they get my attention because they're quiet and they're calm and their color palette is just so beautifully anthemically warm. So I don't know. That's why I love them because I'm sick of shouting all the time for attention. I think sometimes the quiet voices should win.
That sense of calm, that's actually really interesting. I mean, that juxtaposes kind of what everyone feels like we should be doing, which is get everyone jacked up, excited, increase the dopamine and the blood pressure, what you're describing to me. And by the way, I feel the same way. It's like, what are the things in my life that I could actually help bring the blood pressure down?
Yeah.
Calm me down, because everything else is chaos in life, right?
Everything. I mean, that's the problem we all have as humans. Like it doesn't feel like anybody, whether it's politics, whether it's business, whether it's life, we're always being asked for something. And what is exhausting about that is we don't always have a lot to give. This is a bit of a weird sort of psychotherapist moment for me, but I feel like post-pandemic, something happened that we were so unsure about the future of the world that we pretended we were okay, but we weren't. And it's really clear to me when you look at the level of antagonism and lack of empathy and the lack of humanity and a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, that something broke and we need to try and work out how to rebuild it. And so my sort of general demeanor is like, I'm very proud of what we do. We have a lot of very good parties on board, but we also have some amazingly serene moments where people can just connect with just the ocean or just literally feel the sun on their skin or just, that moment where you're out at sea and you just lick your skin and it tastes like salt, just feel really simplistic things. And there's this really beautiful thing when you if you travel to Europe, one of the most wonderful things about going through Europe is not the fact that you're in Europe. It's this idea that, you go to like a little place in, I don't know, maybe you're in Tuscany, like how fancy is that? And you go to a little trattoria and they're like, oh, come inside. And you sit down and they go, oh, get you the pasta. And they're like friendly. You go, oh my God, they're friendly. They actually want me here. And then you go, what is it? And they go, it's just tomato, olive oil, and a little bit of basil. And you go, that's it? But the simplicity of those ingredients and the flavor that brings because of the way they love food and the energy in it, holy shipperoni, that's the thing for me that I wish we had more of, the purest ideas, simple ideas, unlayered, to allow people just to completely get rid of all of the layers they have to deal with to rebuild themselves. That's what I think all of us need to do. And that's why, again, plug for me, we have a brand which allows people to get away. And honestly, connection with your partner. It is not selfish to take a holiday without your kids. It is actually critically important. The reality is, if you holiday without your kids, you are 3 times more likely to keep your marriage intact by the time that child has grown up and has left the household. Like, do it for yourself. Even if you don't come on our ships, I don't care. Just go on a holiday with the person you love. Spend some time with them. Make sure you still love them. Invest.
I think that's actually really great advice, honestly. I mean, I have young kids and I get it. And my wife and I, sometimes it's like, and to use, I guess, the terminology, but sometimes we feel like 2 ships passing in the night.
Because your role is, and it's quite rightly, you're there to obviously make sure the kids are okay and you get them and turn them into great people. But you fell in love with somebody for a reason. And the last thing you need to do is like literally sit back in the end and go. And the other thing is, healthy relationships are so critically important to kids to have great relationships themselves. It doesn't have to be us. I'm just saying to anyone that's an adult right now, if you have the means and you have someone who can help you take care of the kids, please, over the next 2 years, just take a holiday together. Just spend some time together, because it will literally illuminate a lot of things for you. And the kids, I'm telling you now, when you are happy, when you are together, when you are in love with somebody and they see that physically and viscerally, game changer. And the world, if it had more love, maybe it wouldn't be so crazy.
Oof. You know what? I think, Nathan, that's actually a great place to segue to the end here, because that was really well said. A beautiful ending to this, actually.
Well, also, if you don't stop, I'll just keep talking and we'll be here for like 7 hours.
Well, hey, to be honest with you, I personally couldn't agree with you more on almost every single topic that we discussed. And look, for the folks listening too, I think from what it sounds like, you certainly believe. And what's interesting is you sort of straddle, you do marketing, brand, experience, and I think...
And sales. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you walked us through today is how all those pieces come together in harmony, and all those pieces are extremely important. I love your perspective on, of course, out of home, because it is contextual. I love your perspective on the simplicity of creative and talking us through that, and how also, I think my favorite part of this, honestly, of the discussion is, for folks listening, there is marketing that has to happen before, during, and then again, the afterwards. Yeah, that's going to stick with you for a while. I'm going to be talking to my team about that. Is like, how do people talk about you in rooms that you're not in after the experience or service is done?
It's funny that obviously I've met a lot of CMOs at different places and they talk about, well, we don't really have stories. I'm like, yeah, no, you do. You just haven't asked people. The thing is, we tend to use them as like survey questions, like, oh, how was your experience? Like, no, you've got to have a human conversation where you sit with them and go, like, why did you choose us? Like, that's the sort of openness. And when I do go on the ships, to your question that you asked at the very beginning, I love it, but it's work because, I'm not on holiday. But I do this with both crew and our sailors. And I will tell you, I originally thought when I started this business with my CEO, Nirmal, who was the founder, and he's been with Virgin 20 years as well. So we've been around a long time. We know Richard Branson because we worked with him for a long time. I thought, here I am, mum and dad say, what are you doing? Well, I'm flogging cruises to people, basically. And that's kind of like the sort of how you explain it to them, because they don't really get what I do. The thing that I realized about 2.5 years ago was I was sitting on one of our spaces and I talked to a sailor, and like we were both crying in the end, because the level of depth of what they experienced on board with their mother after having been estranged for a period of time, and how we gave them permission to do something where it had conversations that they felt courageous and they felt safe and they felt good. That was when I kind of went, no, there are stories that are so much more deep than I would ever know if I don't ask. And so that's the thing, no matter what your product is, if you have a purpose in someone's life, there's a story there. You tell that story more than you tell basically your price point or your feature set. Don't talk about what you do, talk about what it does for others. You're in a much better place.
Couldn't agree more. Nathan, really appreciate the conversation. This has been absolutely tremendous. That's it for this episode of Built for Brand. I'm Greg Wise, and if you want fresh perspectives on how to connect with your buyers in real life, we've got a newsletter for that. And Nathan, before we go, how can folks connect with you if they want to connect?
Oh, just generally. So this funny.
You don't have to give your cell phone number out.
No, I'm laughing more because all of a sudden, so we have a voyage where we had creators on board, like 1,000 TikTok people. I'm not massively proficient at social. I'm okay. But after that, they ended up all following me and sort of promoting. And I ended up with like quite a little following on Instagram. So at Nathan DR. And like all of a sudden I'm going, oh my God, the content, I have to keep it up. But it's actually the best place because like literally what we also realized today is that the executives that work in a company, the employees that work in a company, they are the best storytellers about what's going on the inside. You should actually have your teams telling the stories about what it's like, because It is actually more interesting than effectively a pitch. So we actually ask all of our crew to be social posters. We ask all of our executives to kind of get out there and tell inside stories. And so at Nathan DR on Instagram, if you want to catch up and just drop me a message, and yes, I will actually respond to it, despite the fact that, it looks like it's a big account. It's not really like that. It just, a lot of people message me about other shit, but I will definitely, we get back to you eventually. I do. I can't help it. I can't help myself. I respond to everything.
I'm like that too. That's awesome. All right, reach out to Nathan. Nathan, thank you so much. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks very much. Ciao, ciao.